we have our programs. I'd like to begin by introducing members of the Reparations Commission that are here. Can you please stand? Members of the Reparations Commissioners, please stand. James, who's that? Rima, and who's next to Rima? Jonathan, Mark, who am I missing? I think I saw Conrad. Conrad, who else?
Denise and Conrad.
Gail. Yeah, I said Gail.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing I'm supposed to inform you about are the cards. After our presenters speak, if you have questions, there's some people with, Jonathan is holding up index cards. You're welcome to put and write your question on the index card, and we will collect it and try and answer as many as possible. I now turn this forum over to Mark Wilson.
So my name is Mark Wilson. I'm a member of the Reparations Commission. I have the honor of facilitating today's session where we have some amazing speakers. You're going to get some updates later on about the work that the Commission's been doing. You'll get a chance to ask questions of our speakers, as well as you'll get a chance to ask questions from Lois and the Reparations Commission members about what we're up to. So I recognize that you have a lot of things you could be doing today, so I thank you for your investment in our dialogue today. We do want to start off with relationship. Reparative work, transformative work is all about relationships. So we'd love to ask everyone to just take a moment or two, maybe the next couple of minutes, turn to the person next to you, tell them your name, where you're from, what brought you here today. So if we could just do that, that would be wonderful. All right. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. I had to break out my 3rd grade elementary school teacher. But it's always, when we center a relationship, that's always the hardest part of getting back, because actually that's the best part, is talking to each other, being with each other, sharing space with each other. But we did want to start off with a little video, short video, that this video is put together by the Reparation Education Project with Mikichi Taifa putting together this video. It talks about, it's a short video about reparations concept to reality. It focuses on the African American experience in our initiatives to focus both on indigenous communities and African Americans, but it does ground us in some basic concepts of reparations, where it's been and where we are today. So we wanted to kind of ground our time together in this short video. Thank you all so much. One thing I should have mentioned beforehand, we might be in very different places when thinking about reparations. We might be in a thinking place, a feeling place, a moral place. So wherever place you're at, I should have mentioned this beforehand, take care of yourself. You know, seeing some of these things, they might land with different people in different ways. So take care of yourself as we're having the discussion, to make sure that you're in the place that you feel safe and brave. So I'll invite our speakers to come up. We're gonna spend about the next 40-45 minutes hearing from some of our wonderful speakers. If you want to come up to the table up here. So our first speaker is Councilmember Fisher. She was elected to her first term on the Prince George's County Council in November 2022. General election, represents District 2. She's the proud daughter of immigrant parents of Nigerian and South Asian descent. and broke barriers as the first daughter of African immigrants to be elected to the Prince George's County in 2018. She currently serves as the Prince George's County Council member of District 2. She serves as the chair of Health, Human Services, and Public Safety, and the vice chair of the General Assembly Committee for the County Council. So thank you so much for taking time. So we're going to give each speaker about 10 minutes to kind of talk about their involvement in reparations and speak to what's going on. So the first question I have for you is just tell us a little bit about the work that's being done at the county level regarding reparations.
Well, good afternoon, Greenbelt. It is so good to be here with you all. And of course, I have to recognize my colleague, Councilwoman Ingrid Watson, who represents you all on the County Council, and your amazing mayor as well, for giving me the honor of being part of this panel. So reparations started for me when I was a kid, to be honest. When I just saw and just kind of realized the injustices in our society. And my mom, so it's always easier now because there's Kamala Harris, but I always go, I'm Kamala, but I'm dipped in Africa. So my mom is South Asian, you know, curry, where's the sari, Hindu, right? But my mom's family, we're from Durban, South Africa. So we were my ancestors were indentured servants from India, from Andhra Pradesh, and were brought into South Africa to work farms and diamond mines, which is why when you hear about the Rhodes Scholarship, there's two. There's one for the world and there's one for South Africa, because the Rhodes money was all the diamonds in South Africa. And then my dad is Nigerian Yoruba. And I think having that apartheid sort of background history, my uncle was killed, anyway, my family fled, ended up here in Prince George's County, long story. Reparations was a passion, so when I got elected for the first time in the House of Delegates for Maryland, I represented our county, and I wanted to put a bill in, and I did, for Maryland to actually have a statewide work group and commission on reparations. And I went and sat down with every single Black elected in the General Assembly. Because I'm an African immigrant, I felt that I wanted to respect the Black American electeds, if they were passionate about it, did they want to do it, was anyone doing it, and everybody was like, no, you do it. And it looks, and it's better coming from you. And I was like, okay. So I did all of that, and Talmadge Branch, who is African American and Native American in our legislature, went to him as well. And I ended up putting it in every year for 4 years. Larry Hogan was the governor, there's lots of dynamics, and it wasn't going anywhere. I would have hearings, and usually that bill goes to the HGO, which is the House Government Operations Committee. It was rough, but I will say, every member of the Black Caucus co-sponsored it, and members that were not in the Black Caucus. A lot of our white brothers and sisters also co-sponsored the bill. So then when I went to council, I was like, I gotta find the right person to carry this on. So right now, Alethia McCaskill, she is African American, she's a delegate from Baltimore County. She now carries that bill, and I'm very excited to announce that the Maryland Black Caucus has now made reparations Commission a legislative Black Caucus priority. So I do think that we're going to see some traction in Annapolis. So that's kind of how I got started, and then transitioned to the council. I think we really wanted to put just having a forum like this is helping the cause, right? We wanted to put some eyes and some media on it, so I did author, which I handed out in your packets from my office. Our council did a resolution encouraging the General Assembly to form a Maryland Reparations Commission. It was passed. Every single one of your council members here in Prince George's co-sponsored it. Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the NAACP of our county, everybody came and testified in Largo. It was on the news that week, and it really helps sort of Annapolis sort of see that energy and that desire to have a commission, get minds together and get going. Now people will say, well, how come you didn't just form a commission group for Prince George's County? Well, the reality is when you come to the money part of it and the benefit part, the same people that should be receiving it, it shouldn't be their taxpayer money paying for it, right? And so in Prince George's County, where you have a majority, and some people might not agree, but I think that's where the council was. You have a majority-minority county. You have a huge sect of the Prince George's population is from North Carolina and South Carolina, so depending on Maryland liability, they may qualify, they may not, depending on what a final bill would look like. It didn't feel right that our budget, the Prince George's County budget, should be going into there. It should be a bigger pot of money and resources at the state level. That has been my perspective. Again, people have different ways about it. I got some negative pushback from people that feel like only HR 40 is the only vehicle. And when I went through the bill when I was a state rep, there was some negativity from some groups that did not like states doing something. But I always say states lead a lot, and we are the state of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, and I just couldn't sit in that state house built by slaves and not put that bill in every single year, right? And so that was sort of that thinking and where Prince George's County is and where Maryland is, as the video, which was a great video, states like California and New York have already passed commissions, I just put these facts out there. The state of Maryland has either the largest or the second largest Black caucus in the nation. You have your first Black speaker. You have your first Black state treasurer. You have your first Black attorney general. You have your first foreign-born Asian American female lieutenant governor. And then you have your first Black governor. If Maryland can't do reparations, well, I don't know who can. Okay? That's just how I feel about it, for real. And I've worked a lot with state archives, especially in areas of our state, like in Cambridge, Maryland, other places. My best friend's family knows the exact kind of plantation they're from, out in Salisbury. It's not that hard. Will a state bill ever be perfect? No, but I think the road to healing is never a perfect road. And we've all traveled a healing journey in our own lives. And this is a healing journey for our community and our society. And I cannot speak for a whole people. I don't think anyone thinks something will be perfect. No state thing is ever perfect. But it's a direction, and it's a way forward. And I'm very proud that for those of you who maybe follow county government, local government, the Maryland Association for Counties is a big association. Every county pays into it. They lobby Annapolis on behalf of county issues. Prince George's County and Montgomery County and Baltimore City, not kind of Baltimore County, are the biggest members. We pay the most. And I am very happy to announce, through a lot of pushing, a lot of advocacy that I do, the concept of reparations is actually going to be a session at Winter Mako this year in Greenbelt. It's important for Marylanders and elected officials from across the state to have a forum just like this. This is basically how Winter Mako is. I know your mayor knows how all these MMLs and Makos go. This is when you get into the weeds and sort of talk about the concepts, have those maybe uncomfortable conversations rather than in a hearing, right? So it's a big step for Mako, and Mako, which I'm still fighting, tends to be a bit conservative because it's like an electoral college. It's one county, one vote. So we, as big as Prince George's County, has the same vote as Somerset. So you can imagine how the policy comes out of Maryland Association of Counties, right? It's very skewed. Rural counties actually have more power of a voice in organizations like that. Your Maryland, and it's important to follow these kind of things, your Maryland Association of States Attorneys runs the same way. One prosecutor, one vote. How is that possible when the three biggest counties in Maryland are doing the most dockets? Why is that, right? So those internal organizations have a lot of influence in Annapolis, and Annapolis affects us all. And so I'm really excited that I pushed Mako to put reparations. So it'll be discussed out in Cambridge, Maryland. I will follow up with the dates. I believe Winter Mako is sometime this December, and it's before the session starts. And so that's sort of like the work I'm doing. I think my journey as someone, even though my dad goes through this whole story about how through my mom, my grandma, who's like a little bit Sierra Leone, we have ancestors that were in the United States and came back to Africa through Liberia into Sierra Leone and her heritage. But mostly, any reparations bill you would do, depending on what it is, because I personally, right, would not maybe fully qualify, depending on how you cut it, on different things. Certain people have ideas, well, if your family came and you were African American in the 1960s, there could be benefits because of redlining. There's so many ways you can look at a bill. But what I feel is, it's such a passion of mine because I'm just so tired, in the fact of public service and wanting to help people. You constantly are working on Band-Aids, on Band-Aids, on Band-Aids, and I just want to cure the cancer. And the cancer is white supremacy, the cancer is institutional racism, the cancer is sexism, the cancer is all these things, right? The cancer is capitalism with no seat and no floor, right? And I just, especially for my generation, I just want to reach in and grab those issues. And I think there's a lot of amazing young people that don't always choose elected office or do this work, and because it can feel like a gerbil in a wheel instead of just grabbing onto like the source. And so, yeah, I think we have the courage to go forward. I will make sure I stay in communication with all of you to hopefully sign up and testify this coming session in Annapolis. The county council is doing all that we can, and when he said I'm the vice chair of General Assembly Committee, so your county government, we have a committee called General Assembly. So the council actually votes on our position on bills. There are specific things that impact the county, and so that's why a resolution is even more of a poignant thing than just a letter. It's like a codified piece of county law that says we would like reparations. And I think, our lobbying team and others will be doing more as Prince Georgians to fight for that in Annapolis. I'm totally open to feedback and what you all think on that direction, but I think the council really felt, especially in a hard budget time that we're in, that this needs to be a state-run initiative. And that Prince Georgians deserve to see that repeat from the state dollars and not maybe their property tax dollars, right? And I could go into like what makes your county budget, but I won't go that too far off. So that's really me. I'm done. Lovely to be here, and DM me on Instagram, it's really me. So Wanika Fisher, that's really me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Peter Landeros. He is a spokesperson for the Piscataway Indian Nation and director of American Indian Movement Woodland Territory. He's also been working with members of our Reparations Commission in a really thoughtful way, helping us to understand the American Indian, Indigenous Peoples, First Nations movement and involvement in reparations. So we're so lucky to have you here today. My first question for you is just, again, we saw a video earlier a little bit about the reparations movement in the African American community. We'd love to learn a little bit, what does reparations look like in the Indigenous peoples community? I know that's a very broad question, but.
That is a broad question. Across the country, different nations have been able to get some sort of reparation, whether it's permission to have casinos or some sort of development of their land that they have there. But here in the state of Maryland, the state-recognized tribes have seen no reparation whatsoever. Besides given state recognition, that's it. No money to do anything, no buildings of our own to have our own ceremonies or cultural classes or anything like that. I know for the past 10 years, I've been fighting with the government in Annapolis to listen to us about being able to maybe build a community center of our own so that we can have a place to congregate. If it isn't for spaces like this or basement of churches or things like that, we have no place to go. There is a community center in Baltimore City, but that is so underfunded. It's only open 2 days a week and offers really nothing to us as a community except for They may hold dance classes if they're on one day out of the month or something like that, where we should be able to do a lot more. Where I come from, I'm a Pasquayaki Indian from southern Arizona, but I lived here since 1973 and have been a part of working with the Piscataway Indian Nation since I was in elementary school. My parents have worked with them. I've always participated in things with them. And it allowed me the position that I have today as spokesperson. The acquisition of land or a building, we're not looking for so much as a handout of money. We want to be able to have our community sustain itself. We should be able to have jobs, we should be able to create this, we should be able to create that, and we can't. Because we have the smallest voice in our own homeland, and nobody listening. Everything you saw up there today, I applaud, and it is great to see what has come to other communities, but nothing has come to mine. And that's why I'm here to have this discussion. They throw us little bones every now and then by saying, well, we did this for you. Monday is Indigenous Peoples Day over Columbus Day in the state of Maryland. Okay, that does draw some attention to the indigenous people of the state of Maryland, but how many people in here know the state-recognized tribes over the tribes that are across the country, like the Cherokee and the Sioux and the Lakota, which are the more popular names? But you have your Nashawawash, your Pamunkey, your Piscataway, and the other tribes that are here in the state of Maryland that have nothing, except for the state recognition. So if we can start the conversation to help us as a community as much as everybody else helps all the other communities, then we're taking steps forward to better what's going on in my community as an Indian, or American Indian, or an indigenous person, depending on what's politically correct for the day. In talking to the Piscataway Indian Nation Chief Mark Tyak before I came here, he specifically told me to really speak the truth on what's going on. And just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke at a panel about civil rights. And again, the little slideshow that they had beforehand, everything that they read was all about African American civil rights. Nothing said about indigenous people's civil rights. Okay? And that's a problem when we come to these sit-downs. Okay? You're willing to do the research and find out what happened for one community, but you're not willing to do it for the other. Why? Again, we are the smallest voice on our own land. There isn't a piece of grass from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean that wasn't indigenous people's land. So when it comes to reparation, we need to be brought to the table. In any discussion that's going to help a community, whether it's indigenous, African American, Asian, Hispanic, we all need to be brought to the table. And not just forget about, because we get to hear we don't exist anymore, Oh, Indians are always out west, or you're all dead. You guys aren't real anymore. What else is there? That's my favorite one. People ask me, am I a real Indian? I quote myself. The last time I checked, I was real. And I was born on a reservation. I'm 100% Pasquayaki Indian, you know. And this is the stuff we put up with today. And I'm going to say this in closing. The reason behind that is because it states in the Constitution, we are the merciless savages. A couple hundred years go by, the great Indian wars happen. And the great generals of that time call us less than dogs and proceed to starve us to death and cut our population by half by not feeding our children, our women, our elders. So we're looked upon as objects and things instead of human beings. It's time that we get pulled to the table. It's time that people look at us for what we are, which are human beings, even though we're indigenous, so that we can have a say in what happens. We need our own community center. We need our own place that I can go and I can teach generations upon generations of people how to sing prayer songs. Because if I do that in the basement of a church, I get kicked out and I'm told I'm calling Satan. And we all pray to the same God. We just use a different word in whatever language we're singing in, whether it's Lakota, Yaqui, Cherokee, Cheyenne. So this is why I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for, I think, challenging us to explore that history, like you mentioned, that so often gets whitewashed or not spoken of, and challenging us to say, when are we going to do something about that? So thank you so much. Our next person who is here is Maxine Gross. She is a fifth-generation member of the College Park's historic African American community in Lakeland. She's the founding chairperson of the Lakeland Community Heritage Project and serves as chairperson for the City of College Park's Restorative Justice Commission and the University Partnership. Her past public service includes 7 years as an elected member of the City Council of College Park, Maryland. So I'm just going to start off with a basic question, and then she has some slides that she's going to present. But just tell us a little bit about what the work your group is doing in College Park and Lakeland.
Unless you have all day, I will really try to shorten my answer to that question. As you heard a second ago, I do a lot of things. And in order to kind of focus on place and just the main work I do.
Is the mic on?
I don't know, I think something happened.
Oh, yeah, just push it out.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I really want to focus on just a piece of the work that I do and the community that I do it for. So the first slide, if you have it, everything that I do really works around the community of Lakeland. And Lakeland, as was stated a moment ago, is the historic African American community of College Park. About 20 years now, a group of residents of Lakeland were in a meeting for our local civic association. And we talked about the fact that the community we knew was disappearing. And that if we didn't do anything about it, that no one would be around to tell the stories and to really understand what the neighborhood was and what it meant to folks. So out of that conversation was born a nonprofit group called the Lakeland Community Heritage Project. And so the mission of the project is noted there. That was written by one of our board members who's actually here with us, Mary Sees of Greenbelt. The funny part about it is I never use that. I always say that our mission is to preserve and tell the stories of Lakeland. So if you don't know where Lakeland is, here's a map. We're just across the road from the University of Maryland. And so as you'll notice, we are surrounded by Berwyn Heights, Berwyn, and College Park. And if you are aware at all of the history of Prince George's County, up until the 1970s, Prince George's County's racial makeup was vastly different than it is today. It went from being a vastly European American community with small pockets of African American settlements to a place that is vastly minority. So right now, African American leaning to a Hispanic population. So that dot is where my house is. So that's where Lakeland is. Lakeland began as a European American community around 1900. It was first settled by a gentleman by the name of Edwin Newman. Newman designed Lakeland or envisioned Lakeland to be a resort-style community for his friends in Washington, D.C. So he built a number of resort homes around a lake. And so that was Lakeland's beginning. Around the area that is Lakeland proper, African Americans started to settle. And by 1903, some of those folks had moved in to Lakeland proper. And of course, as African American people moved in, European Americans moved out. So by about 1910, between 1910 and 1920, it became an African American community and was that up until the 1970s. So if you get to the next slide. Because of us being, that's Newman right there, and this is how he envisioned Lakeland. Of course, that never really happened, but that's another long story. Here's an ad for a couple of the properties in Lakeland. So if you go to the next slide. Because of our situation just across the road from the University of Maryland now, and back then the institution that preceded the university, the Maryland Agricultural College, a lot of Lakelanders worked for that institution. This is one of the earliest images where we can identify the African Americans in a photograph at the university, as was then the Agricultural College. And all of those gentlemen are Lakelanders. There are a few members of the Dory family there, and my grandfather's uncle is the young man sitting behind the potatoes. We recently found records in the University of Maryland archives that indicate, at least we can pinpoint, from 1917, there are named African Americans working at the university. So if we go to the next slide. So this is Lakeland as of around 1970. That was before urban renewal demolished 2/3 of the neighborhood. The neighborhood for the urban renewal project was broken into 3 sections. Clearance area east, clearance area west, and the conservation area. So you can kind of guess what happened with those 3 sections. So the conservation area is that area in the middle, and that's the portion of Lakeland that exists today. The next slide. This is a little bit of a description from our digital archive of what Lakeland is like.
In those days, so we had 2 stores, Mr. Black and Mr. Max stores. They were right across from each other. And we have 2 churches that still exist, the Baptist Church and the Methodist Church. and then you had the school back there. I think it's like an Asian school or something nowadays, but that was Lakeland Elementary when I was coming up, and that's the school we attended. So we walked to school, we walked to churches. We had 2 baseball diamonds. We had like a town hall. At the school, they would have like what did they call it? Canteen, where they would have, local bands or DJs or something like that play. So that, we could have nighttime activity. There was also a beer garden, that the, grown folks hung on at, that had like, pool tables and live bands. And, of course they sold beer and liquor. And it was just, every day was an adventure as a kid. We just played and did everything in another community. It was literally a community that was a village, right? So when we were kids, no matter what you did, everybody kind of knew your business because stuff got around real quick. So you really couldn't do anything and get away with it because, and then the community took care of itself. Everybody knew who belonged to everybody. They know whose child you were. And if you were doing anything that was not considered to be appropriate behavior, you answered to the community. Any adult saw you doing something wrong, you answered to that.
So what happened with Lakeland? Urban renewal happened. And as I said, 2/3 of the neighborhood was destroyed through an urban renewal project. Meetings on the project started in the 1960s. Members of the Lakeland community worked with the city to come up with a plan that all parties could agree with. That kind of started to go a little bit haywire, and the project that was put forward to the federal government was not exactly as the community wanted, but it was something they felt they could live with. One of the primary facets of the plan was that there would be opportunities for Lakelanders to leave because of the construction that was required. But it was always stated that there would be a place for them to come back to, that it would only be a temporary move. Unfortunately, that part of it didn't happen. So this is a newspaper article, and it says, Lakeland Urban Renewal Area, high-rise living for university faculty and senior citizens. And the heading says, "Is this where you used to live, Daddy?" So that is really an emblem of what happened. So next slide, please. So this is Lakeland today. 1/3 of it is Lake Artemisia natural area. The commission was able to make recommendation to the city and to Park and Planning to change the name, and that request was accepted within the last couple of weeks. So it was announced that it will now be known as Lake Artemisia Natural Area at Lakeland. And also the community center that's housed in Lakeland will be known not as it formerly was as College Park Community Center, but rather as Lakeland College Park Community Center. And so those are two early wins the commission has been able to make. Another is the beginning of some scholarships. So the first ones will probably be paid out, should have been paid out last week. And they were for academic scholarships. The program also has opportunities for vocational scholarships and for folks who want to involve themselves in programs that will teach about restorative justice and reparations. And one of the facets that we felt was important for those programs is that those that receive scholarships are required to give back 8 hours to the community as a way to kind of break the whole concept of knowledge being taken from the neighborhood, but rather to bring it back. So the next slide, please. So this is about the founding of the commission. It is the result of a resolution of mayor and council from 2020, and It's taken us a long time to really get things started. Everything takes much longer than you would anticipate. One of the big challenges was that Lakelanders really didn't feel that something good could happen. And folks really took time to come into a process. I think we've gotten to a place where now we're having good conversation. The research on specifically the details of what happened are able to beginning to come forward. Unfortunately, now that Lakelanders are involved, there's question as to whether or not the overall political climate is going to allow work to go forward, but we will press on. This is the next slide. So here's the purpose of the commission, and there's a couple more slides. If you're forward a couple. Oh, so I just wanted to bring a couple of connections with Greenbelt. One of the early things that we found is that the whole way that Lakeland became part of the city of College Park is a bit of the tragedy. Lakelanders voted overwhelmingly in opposition of becoming a part of the city of College Park. And that whole vote was reported in the Greenbelt newspaper. When you have an opportunity, read it. I think it really speaks to the period and really the tone of society and its relationships with the African American community of the time.
What year was that?
1945. Last, and then one more slide. Okay. So here's the goals of the commission. And there's also a slide there for a Lakelander who was part of the workforce here in Greenbelt to help build the community. So with that, I know I've talked way past my time. I will apologize, but I'm going to blame it on those folks at the University of Maryland I've been hanging out with for so long.
Thank you all, thank you so much. I think your presentation speaks to the power of story and history and the importance in reparations movement to understand that and be able to tell that story. So thank you so much for sharing about that. Our final speaker is Nancy Joy Alchin. I said that correctly? Okay. She is a retired teacher of English as a second language and a member of the Baha'i faith, which has long considered racism to be America's most challenging issue. She and 6 other Greenbelters of various faith groups have created the GILA Reparations Education Task Force, whose purpose is to support the work of the Reparations Commission through community education and healing interaction. So again, another broad question. Just tell us a little bit about the efforts of your group and your role in kind of helping people to understand reparations.
Okay. Is the microphone on?
No. Button.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't usually do things like this. Yeah, so we're just a group of people who got together to do something and gave ourselves this fancy name. Before I start, I'll introduce the other members of the group. I'm the spokesperson today because I'm the person that talked to Gail most recently. But I don't have any particular title or anything. So we are Susan Walker. You can maybe stand up. Susan Walker. Joe Parks. Jim Fisher. And Rose Margee, who is not here, and Marcia Harrington, who is not here. And me. So how did this come about and what have we done? Well, first of all, we are people of faith, and I can't decide whether to have my glasses on or off. And I think that most people of faith agree that faith has two components, that neither one can exist without the other. There's the component of belief and there's the component of action. And so if we're going to take action to make this world a place that reflects the attributes of God, we are going to look around at the world and see what it needs, and see what has happened. And so we are all about trying to bring justice to the world, mercy to the world, unity. So when the commission came about, the faith communities took notice. And I would say that the Baha'i community had a lot of discussion about it, and then GILA had a lot of discussion about it. So GILA is the Greenbelt Interfaith Leadership Association. It's been around for decades, and it currently has more than a dozen members who are representatives or pastors or leaders of their congregations. The congregations represented are Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, and Baha'i. Did I leave any out? 5, yeah. And of course, I think they would be open to others. So, it's turned itself off. So, so there can be no doubt that great injustice was done in America's past. And the effects of that injustice and the effects of racism continue to hold our country back. So we believe that the commission holds great promise for healing, for helping us heal as a community and helping us understand how to contribute to healing on a national level, even an international level. So we decided that we would start with, in 2023, we would start with educational programs about the history of racism in America's past. And we brought a film to the Reel and Meal called Traces of the Trade. And then we followed that with a dialogue series for the better part of a year, which was called Sacred Ground. And that was educational about, it was really a terrific series. Really went into the breadth of racism and white supremacy from the very beginnings of the country. And we all learned a lot. And I would say that everybody who was in that project were people that had done a lot of study and reading already and had their eyes open for all of their years, but still learned even more. And I thought maybe I would just share with you one thing that happened, one way that my thinking changed as a result of that study. Because I really understood how the whole society influences each person and their trajectory. So I thought back to my own family's legend, family legend. My grandfather, born in the late 1900s, when he was 2 years old, and his 2 brothers were not much older, their father died. He left my great-grandmother Anna penniless. He left a business that had no value, and they didn't have anything. So what did they do? Well, they scraped, Mom moved in and the boys went out and worked on the farm as they were growing up. That's how they spent their summers. And when they finally got to college, they were working in the kitchen and doing other students' laundry and so forth. And then they all got out and just worked and worked and worked, and built successful businesses. One became a doctor, 2 of them got into business. And my grandfather built a tool business, and then he became successful. So that's the narrative. So I went back to this narrative, and I thought to myself, you know, now wait a minute. These boys, when they got out of high school, they didn't have to go to work to support mama. They got into college. All 3 of them went to Oberlin, which is a private college. How did that happen? Well, let's see. Well, they had an uncle who was very well off. He must have helped. They were in a neighborhood that was white and upper class. They must have all helped that family out. So I thought this is more than just one family. They were in an environment that supported them. So now I went back and thought to myself, what if a similar family was African American? Would they have had all those opportunities to go to college? Would they have been able to? And the thing that really capped off my understanding of how much they were supported just by being white and being of a social class is the fact that I now have my great-grandmother Anna's diamond ring, which has a very large diamond. And you know, all those years of struggle, she never had to go sell her diamond to pay for the food on the table. So, as a result of this study, I've re-examined my own past and came to understand the function of the privilege of being white, how that assisted my family, and new appreciation for the people who didn't have those kinds of privileges or opportunities. So, justice is a prerequisite for unity. We think that the commission holds great promise, especially because of the way it's going about. First, the citizens of Greenbelt voted it into existence, and secondly, it has 21 members, and it doesn't have a leader or one person really taking it along. It is a collaboration, and I feel certain that when it comes out with its final recommendations, that they will be very well founded. So our group has moved on, and this year, aside from coming up with our fancy name, we sponsored another film at the Rio Meal, and this film was called The Cost of Inheritance, and it was about reparations. And we have now decided that we're going to take a step based on the work of a national group called Coming to the Table. And Coming to the Table promotes gathering the diverse people of your community for friendship, for interchange of ideas, for better understanding, and for healing. And of course, a natural way for this to happen is to sit down to dinner together. So we are now organizing a program of monthly dinners where we will do just that. We will gather together, we will have dinner, we will have some kind of a presentation, short presentation with a topic, and then we will have discussions at our tables about this topic. And we feel that when people bring out that we will be able in this kind of, and the discussions, by the way, will be facilitated, and we're going to train the facilitators. And we feel that this kind of discussion will allow us to share the things that are unique about our heritage from our ethnic background, and understand where each other is coming from at a deeper level. And I think that also that when you become friends, you share feelings. And one of the things that I think that religion brings to the idea of reparations is the fact that every religion has a history of suffering. of tragedy and trauma. Most of the founders of religions were persecuted. Are you telling me that I've taken too much time? Okay.
Not too much, but we do need to, we want to make sure that people have some time to answer questions. So maybe if you want to tell people how to come to some of these events, or the best way to.
Okay, so, so we feel that coming together, that we all do share sadness for what happened in the past. And we can all grieve together. And that's a way that we can bond and move together in unity. So, so if you're interested in keeping in the loop as far as when we start this program of these monthly dinners, there's a stack of papers on the back table that you can fill out your interest.
Awesome, thank you so much. We do have time if there are a few questions for our panelists. I know Councilmember Fisher had to go to another event, but if there are questions, you can either kind of raise your hand. The first hand, sorry, right here.
I'd like to ask Mr. Peter Landon.
Landeros.
I'm sorry, my glasses are not as good as I would like them to be. So I would like to ask you how we in the community can approach our government about giving you all some land and community center.
The best way for that to happen is to write to government. Letter campaign, email blasts, things of that nature. Not just to the state government, but your county councilman and everything and all that, so that they can really understand that not just, and then they need to, but hopefully by that they understand they're not just ignoring one small community, but if everybody else gets behind it and says, let's do this, then they pretty much have to, I hope.
Mine is a follow-up to her question. Is there anything actively going on in Maryland, in the state of Maryland, that would support a community center or some cultural encouragement, education that you know
of? That I know of, no. Besides myself and a few other people going out to do talks like this or to have conversations at, there's Native American events that happen in the state of Maryland called powwows, which is just a gathering of nations to sell items and to show traditional and dance and things of that nature and some songs. It's really not a political statement for us to be able to say anything about this, which is the main reason why I came here. Is if just one person sends a letter, it makes a difference. Okay, we've tried to have a discussion with the Moore administration. Nothing. Governor Moore took a whole bunch of pictures of us at a Maryland Historical Society thing that happened in Piscataway Park for the Akaki Foundation. And we went there, we sang songs, we did a traditional greeting to the governor, where Chief Mark Tyak welcomed him to Piscataway land, which is the entire Piscataway Park is originally, including Greenbelt, Washington, D.C., Piscataway land, to Piscataway land. And we got offered a meeting to go to the governor's sit-down place in Annapolis, his meeting room. Piscataway Indian Nation, along with the other stately recognized tribes, were there. We all voiced our concerns and what we want to see happen, and nothing.
To that point, sir, 25, 30 years ago, this has been laughed out, period, the whole concept of reparations. So to that extent, I think there's some progress. Where is there in this process that we can actually shift in power? Because to the extent that a lot of this stuff that has happened over the course of time has been systemic more so than individuals. Individuals come and go. So how do we get to the point where we're going where the outcomes are actually driven by substance as opposed to symbolism, as you just mentioned? And I'm asking that to him.
Well, for us, it would just be to have a conversation at the table with everybody, including whatever was going on. The slideshow that was presented was beautiful, but it said nothing about Native reparations, which has happened in different areas of the country. Nothing's happened here in this state. When we talk about civil rights, it's always about African American civil rights. You never hear anything about Latino civil rights, Asian civil rights, Native American civil rights. So it's inclusion of all people, okay? Because one people is one voice, but if we can bring everybody together, it's like a fist. It's a lot stronger than just one finger. So that's the way I look at it.
I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly. Could you repeat again, what was Piscataway land? What is Piscataway land?
Piscataway land is defined how far the language went, okay, which is from St. Mary's County all the way up to the Potomac River, Washington, D.C., even up towards Howard County and parts of Carroll County and Frederick. You even have Piscataway, New Jersey, okay, which defines how far the language went. That is Nanacoke Lenape land. That isn't Piscataway, but that's how far the language went. So, again, no matter where you step in this country, whether, not just in this country, but on this continent, it's all indigenous land. They belong to some indigenous tribes, okay? And there are tribes that no longer exist, that are extinct because of what happened here in this country. And now they're called rivers and roads and land basins or park names and things of that nature. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what the federal government wants. They don't want us to have anything, neither does the state of Maryland. They'd rather see Piscataway Park, and that's enough, even though we have no control over it because that's federal Park Service land. Okay, you have Susquehanna River and Dam. That's the name of a tribe. Well, that's okay. They have to live with that and nothing else. Patuxent State Park, it's the name of a tribe that no longer exists. Oh, but you have all these roads and street signs that say this and say that and that acknowledge you as a people. But what does that do for us in 2024, besides remind you of the past? And don't get me wrong, you have to know the past to be strong enough to move forward. But that's not building that community center. That's not creating jobs in the indigenous community. That's not allowing my grandkids a place to go to learn their culture. I had to teach my children their culture in my own house, where I should be able to go somewhere and do that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Yes, sir.
I saw a hand over here, and then I'll come back over here. Yes.
So to follow on that point, when we think of reparations as, say, an execution of a transfer of resources to those peoples that have been, unjustly marginalized, enslaved, dispossessed of their own resources in the past. Various implementations have been proposed, like, cash payments, the 40 acres and a mule. What do you all see in 2024 as the best vehicle of the transfer of resources in the form of reparations? I know nationally programs have been proposed, like jobs programs, universal health care to address that disparity. What do you all see as the vision in this day of what that would be?
I would just say that reparations aren't strictly the transfer of something. It's not really just the transfer of something. The United Nations looks at reparations as being a number of different things. The first one being stop doing the harm. And that, I think, is a huge part that we've not begun to discuss as a society at all. I think it goes back to what we were saying a moment ago, that to focus on repair for one person does not diminish the need for repair to other groups. It's largely looking at a society where there isn't an other, there is an us all, and that's real, not simply something that people say when it's convenient to them. In College Park, the city's Restorative Justice Commission, and we don't use reparations because folks stop listening when you use that word. They go to, are you asking me to give them money? We don't, at that point, we don't have the conversation about what happened, how do we make repair, and what does that repair look like? And like, as I said before, the first part is stop doing the harm. Another part of it is to create a society that treats people well, such that it's not only are we not perpetuating the old harm, we're not making new ones. There is repatriation. Can a person come back to where they were or have returned whatever that thing is that was lost to them? It could be money. It could be a housing process. There are places that have built basically cultural centers as a method of repair. So it can mean a lot of things, and the answer will probably be many different things, and those different things will have different character wherever the harm was done. The young lady who was sitting in the space where I am right now, I had hoped to be able to speak to her before she left, because what she was saying is that because the makeup of Prince George's County is such that the people who did the harm are no longer the majority, therefore the county should not be asked to address that harm. I think that's invalid, because I think if you look at a lot of the money here, and a lot of the land here, we're still looking at the same people. And I also think that some things don't cost straight up money, and that they can be ways to provide repair. Changing the name of a park is minimal in cost, but it makes a difference to a community because you're recognizing them by, in some small measure, giving something back. So,
Well, I just think that it would be foolish to say that we could complete the reparations and the healing without some kind of a material transfer, material assistance. but I think we're in the infancy of the process of figuring out what that is. And it has to be, the understanding of what it is has to be developed together. No one can promote one idea and try to get everybody on board with it. It has to be a collaboration so that everybody will be on board with it. And Greenbelt, what we found out in some of our investigations was that Greenbelt is one of a number of different municipalities and organizations that are addressing reparations, and the hope is that it will engender a national conversation that will get to the federal level. I think Greenbelt is in the forefront in that conversation.
One way for reparation, you heard repatriation and some other things spoke about up here, is respect for other communities. And not just looking down upon somebody because they come from a different place, a different country. For the longest time, one of the biggest fights was getting the name changed for the Washington football team. And a lot of people don't understand how negative that name, and I'm going to say a word that may make some people mad, but I'm going to say it anyway. Redskin is equated to nigger. Okay? If you don't like what I just said, I'm sorry. Tough. But that's the truth. To see somebody walking around with that word on is ignorance. To see a change happen to where that people show respect to a community, all communities, whether it be Jewish, Catholic, Indigenous, and even in the African American community, whether you're from Africa, Asia, India, wherever you're from, show respect to those people. Give them a voice. Listen to them when they speak. Everybody has a rich history that they come from. I know the rich history of the Piscataway Indian Nation. I also know the rich history of being a Pasquayaka Indian. And it's that history that allows me to stand proud of who I am. And I will never back down from a fight. Or a chance to educate people when it comes to these subjects.
Thank you so much. Please, what's that? We have one final question, I think, in the back.
Respectfully, Brother Peter, they ultimately is we. If the state legislative and executive authority or the United States legislative and executive authorities don't wish to recognize and compensate for the errors that pay us, that's on us. We are educated insufficiently to demand from our legislators and our executives recognition and compensation. So just to say that the state won't build a community center in the areas of the Piscataway, that's ultimately on us. I'm not disagreeing with the point you're making, other than we've got to be more attentive to what those people we send to the legislator and elect as executives do or don't do.
Thank you.
Just a quick reply to what he said. A lot of people get too complacent in where they're at, and they forget to stick that hand back and reach back and help somebody. And a lot of that has to do with the way some people are raised. Traditionally, the way I was raised is I better myself to better my family, to better my people. It's not just I better myself so that I can make more money and live in a bigger house and live and have luxury cars and forget about everybody else. I better myself to better my family, to better my people. If everybody had that mindset, and reached back and helped the person behind them, how much better off would we be as a country, or a state, or a community? We can eliminate homelessness, people going hungry, and everything if people were just willing to help, including the federal government. All this money they send overseas to these different countries and wars and all this stuff, as far as I'm concerned, a veteran should have a home and food. Women and children should have a home and food. If you have an addiction problem, there should be a place for you to go to be able to get that help. But we as a country, we just go, it doesn't bother me. It's not directly involved with me, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, the way I was raised, I have to worry about it. Because the better myself is the better my family and better my people. Thank you.
So much. And please give a warm round of applause to
I think we ought to thank them. I think there was a great deal of knowledge that was picked up today, and I'm sure you all really enjoyed Nkechi's 6.5-minute history. Wasn't that incredible? It's 6.5 minutes. I timed it. I speak on behalf of the Greenbelt Reparations Commission, and I'm going to give this update since the last report we gave was in May of 2024. The Greenbelt Commission has divided its work into 2 phases, and we are completing phase 1. We defined reparations for our commission, and that is in relation to the work being done by the Greenbelt Reparations Commission approved in 2021. Reparations is a process of repairing and healing from harms that have been unjustly inflicted on African Americans, American Indians / indigenous people by government laws, policies, practices, and by sectors that benefited from those injustices such as banks, corporations, educational institutions, health systems, and religious groups. And this definition is based on principles identified by United Nations Human Rights Council, discussions with Piscataway representatives. We spoke to both Peter Linderos and Elder Rico Newman. The Movement for Black Lives and the National Coalition for Blacks for Reparations in America. It is composite. The pillars of restorative justice include criminal prosecutions, truth commissions, reparations, memorializations, institutional reform, and apologies. Those are the pillars of restorative justice. The Commission has created a website that will help to achieve archive Commission information, updates, meeting minutes, and other pertinent information. We also hope to receive questions and requests from the public on our website. It is live. The Greenbelt News Review Archives, the National Archives and Records, Maryland State Archives, and the Tugwell Room at the Greenbelt Library, hundreds of articles in scholarly journals and other sources. We have distilled a historical timeline, which I hope each of you took a copy of. And some of the highlights of that timeline that should help is the fact that actually 12,000 years ago, Turtle Island, which is the United States, Turtle Island was occupied by 112 million indigenous nations. 112 people. 112 indigenous people. There are now, I think, 6 to 9 million indigenous people still alive, which is when Peter says most people think we're dead. It's because they don't realize indigenous people are still here and they're still fighting. So that's something we want to highlight in the timeline. In 1664, the Maryland Assembly codifies race-based laws providing that enslaved people of African descent are held in slavery for life, and all persons born of enslaved African descent mothers will be held in slavery for life. We also want to highlight several things you heard in the original slide, that in 1783, Belinda Sutton, kidnapped from Africa at the age of 12, enslaved for 50 years, sues the Royals in Boston and did receive an award of 15 pounds per year. But she had to go back every year to claim it. Since 1857, the Supreme Court issues the Dred Scott decision, which basically says that we are not and cannot be considered citizens of this country. Even though African Americans and indigenous people and Latinos and Hispanics have fought in every war this nation has ever been in, including the war for its own independence. And if you don't know that, you really need to check that out, because there's a series of programs now on PBS that is emphasizing that information. And I think most people, Henry Louis Gates is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution because his family fought. So it's surprising what you learn when you start digging. In 1870, Henrietta Woods sues for her years of enslavement. Now, Henrietta Woods was awarded $2,500 a year. That $2,500 would be considered $65,000 in today's money. And it is the largest, the largest reparations award granted by a U.S. court as reparations for enslavement. So these are just a few of the things that are in our timeline, and I think that timeline comes out of a 500-page document that we are still developing, and we have some gaps in. And if any of you see those gaps, please let us know. We need all the help we can get. Let's see. We have also engaged the University of Maryland students to help provide the Commission with information about disparities related to race and ethnicity, income, home ownership, education, attainment, and disability. And the results of their research will be on our website at some point, so you can look up that information if you like. We have currently engaged these students again, well, different group of students, and they are going to be mapping demographics in Greenbelt currently, and then they're going to trace back to give a comparison of the differences in the demographics of the people living in our city. We learned that how we interview African Americans and indigenous people can have a profound, harmful impact unless done with great empathy and care. And that was a hard lesson to learn. Phase 2 of the work that we are going to be doing is there are some gaps in our research that require African American and indigenous historians, genealogical research, and the legal review of the city's ordinances and codes. So we are trying to work with the City Council and I believe members of the city council are present, to assist us to complete that charge and help us provide the funds to hire those needed people. We will be organizing meetings and interviews with city stakeholders, the African American and indigenous communities, and hopefully GHI. We hope to be able to speak to previous employees of GHI. We also will review and report the information Tribacy recently collected when they were out asking all Greenbelt residents their experiences and feelings about living in Greenbelt. Some commissioners will attend the First Repair Symposium in Evanston, Illinois in December to connect with other reparations groups and to learn how they are moving through this process. As Maxine put it, this is not an easy process. It's full of layers, and we have to be careful because we don't want to harm. At the same time, we want to be truthful with the information that we find and we gather. Our hybrid meetings are the third Tuesday of each month at 7. This Monday, we invite the public to join the city council meeting to determine if the requested funds that we ask for will be provided us. The meeting starts at 7:30. So that's our update. If you have questions.
Do you want to tell them when the next reparation, when and where the next
meeting is?
Yeah.
Our next meeting is the Tuesday the 15th. We meet at the municipal building in the municipal chambers. It's at 7:30. Any other questions? Oh, my part was easy.
So we heard College Park mentioned, and there's Greenbelt. What do you know about any other jurisdictions in Maryland exploring this?
Any other jurisdictions in Maryland at this point? Well, Baltimore has established a reparations commission. Let me see, there's Baltimore and there's one other one that I can't remember, but right now it's Baltimore. That's the biggest one.
Washington County, I think.
Washington County.
I think so.
Montgomery also, I think, is working on establishing a reparations commission.
So a few kind of logistical things, and then we'll stay because we got some time if there are more questions. But one, just again, thank you all so much for taking a couple of hours to invest in this dialogue. As Lois expressed, this is the beginning of the conversation. Often we say we need to accept and embrace non-closure. So we all may be walking out of here with more questions than answers, and that's a natural part of the restorative justice process. Gate, thank you so much. Gate, they have filmed this and they'll be posting it in the next couple of weeks.
The Recreation Department, thanks for saving us with the microphone.
Yes. And we'll be posting it on the Reparations website, as well as Gate will be posting that. If there are questions, there's information back there. You can put it through the website or email Megan at myoung@greenbeltmaryland.gov. But please visit the website. You can contact us there. If there are questions you're left with today that you say, I want answered, please use those cards, put it in the box. We have a meeting every week, the Public Engagement and Education Committee, so we can do our due diligence to get your questions answered. And that's it. Again, thank you all so much, and we'll be up here for a few minutes if there are questions.